Good afternoon, dear all. Great. I welcome you here. So that's like your first event as the participant of Strategic Board. It's a great pleasure for you, for you joining us. We targeted the Nova Poshta since the very origins because that's one of the most technological companies that people are not aware that this is a technological company. Well, that's a good news. It's not the problem of our clients to be aware of what's going on under the curtains. Well, maybe that's the key thing when people receive the service of that level that they receive, they do not comprehend that you are not a logistic company, you're not a post operator. You provide people with the solutions, and that's good for them. Well, that is the case. We resolve the problems because to a great extent, even a delivery, as for me, is a secondary service, a secondary priority. If you purchase something or if you book something, you would like to receive some type of good, mobile phone, and that's your objective or your wish. And if for whatever reason in your life you face with delivery, logistical operator, courier, payment, bank, pay service, and all other bits and pieces, I don't know, have not you sort of agreed to talk to a courier? You have not agreed to deal with bank. You were just looking for a phone. So all that is absolutely unnecessary for a customer. So we're trying to keep that sort of hidden and beneath. If you would be told now in 3 sentences, so Nova Poshta, what is that? Because Nova is more than something that Nova Poshta was before. Well, Nova is the solution to your problems or your missions, which one way or another are related with deliveries. And talking more, I was preparing myself, and you present yourself as the international group of companies operating in 17 European states, and you comprise Nova Poshta, Nova Post Europe, Nova Global, Cargo Air Company, Supernova Airlines, financial company NovaPay, although it's a fintech, IT company Nova Digital, which is also a participant of our union, and fuel and energy, Nova Energy. That's correct. That's the perimeter of our group. So just from my own understanding, you started with Nova Poshta, Post, and that's where we are now. Was it a strategy at the beginning, or you just evolutionized in such a way? Well, that was the evolution. And in general, I believe that any business have to mix, on one hand, a strategic dimension and course towards achieving the vision. On the other hand, you still could name it as agile state, maybe make decisions ad hoc because the situation is quite dynamic and requires actions. Well, speaking on how come we ended up with that state, well, we were growing, appetites were growing at the group, and the NovaPay appearance in the perimeter of the group or fintech, that costed by the requests of our clients. Our clients were keen to receive the delivery, but were eager to pay. And in fact, to combine these operations together, to check whether the shoes are the requested expected color, check it, and pay for that. Very few were able to do so, so we decided to provide additional service.
And Nova Pošta and Europe, as I understand, we'll talk about that, was a kind of a territorial expansion. So you are the leader at the Ukrainian market. Let's move to the question of global expansion. It's relatively okay at your place. As far as I understand, the decision on global expansion was taken before the war. It has been implemented a bit later. So how did it take place? Were you out of base or out of market? What was the motivation to make this first step? Because it's not that easy, right? Did you have the understanding that it is too easy? Well, first and foremost, the first cautious, or I would say non-systematic steps were conducted rather long ago. And they were done even in 2015, because in 2015 we had Nova Pošta Moldova. Nova Post Moldova. It had the name of Nova Pošta Moldova. And we had also Nova Post Global emerging. So Moldova used to be and is still the company which is the local operator in Moldova, and Global, both then and now, have brought parcels mostly from the United States and China, and they're doing that now as well, just in the incredible amounts. And also, they are sending parcels all over the world. So the first approach was non-systematic at all, and it used to take place in 2015. Then we had long conversations that we need to go abroad, but the company did not go abroad, and I think first and foremost because it is the market leader in Ukraine, and it had lots of work and still has lots of work here. Then the war started, and the company, as always, was under stress, in this case, useful stress. It understood that it is late, that it did not do anything since 2015 till 2022. And when the Ukrainians, millions of Ukrainians, found themselves in the horrendous, stressful conditions in Poland, Germany, and started to ask, well, wait, how can we, for instance, get our things, belongings, private things? There was no Nova Post there. So, for us, it was a kind of huge negative assessment for ourselves. Self-assessment. That's how we perceived it. We were not happy because of the reels where Nova Pošta, Monobank, Dobrobut, Rosetka were presented. No. We understood that as a claim. Is it painful? Was it painful for you as a founder? Well, it was not that pleasant, but really useful, as all unpleasant things are. So, we already started to rush, but we rushed on the one hand, not that organized manner, because we were trying to catch up, and on the other hand, we started to rush with our full passion and commitment. And during the 2 years and 9 months, we found ourselves where we are now at. We have 17 countries. It is happening in a different way. We'll discuss the issues as well now. Altogether, Moldova is really profitable. Also, Poland is profitable. Several countries are in the positive gross margin, but we planned, of course, to have it quicker. So the question then is the role of the founder. I would like to discuss the role of the founder because it's a strategic decision. Global expansion is a strategic decision which mostly is not even taken by the management. That's the decision which you take. What was your role of the founder? Not just in the decision-making process, but you were involved in its implementation. How did it take place? Because it's also important to understand it. Well, first of all, The role of the founder is the key one here, undoubtedly, because we started these conversations in April 2022. You do remember what April 22 is. Fuel prices, the orcs were just driven away from Kyiv city. That was an awful situation, in fact. But we needed to talk about that. But there was no management to talk that about. There used to be management of the payment company, but there was no management which would be responsible for the international operations. That is why we needed to make a deal with each other, to take a decision. Everything is much simpler in that, because we are fully single-minded people with Volodymyr, and the decision of such a scale is taken easily and quickly. And then we had to create the management who we will communicate with. We had to start sending people, searching for people at places. That was the full green. And how is it to come back? Because, of course, you are at the strategic level in Ukraine, but here, just hop, and you were delving deeper into operational level. Did you enjoy it or not? Because, as far as I know, you love to come back to the roots. That is why, as it was April 2022, it was easier for us, because in April 2022, we fully came back to our younger years. We were working on a permanent basis with our management at the same floor, so we never had any head office of our multi-storied tower. It never existed. That is why I don't remember any stress, honestly speaking. You know, I was happy to come back to that. We are full of energy for some new projects. Moreover, global expansion, well, motivation was endless. And I always, well, as I'm dealing with global expansion for a long time from different perspectives, once I used to make a kind of a scheme, a system. I always have a story that first and foremost should be the ambition. So I always have the story of global ambition, then some strategy, which could be a huge one or a tiny one. First should be the strategy, then the actions plan. Then you need to review these actions plan twice on your way. Then you need to implement the update it, then you update it again, then you update the strategy, but the ambition should be at the top, somewhere at the top. And before the war, I was always that frustrated that everything was so good in Ukraine that there were no global ambition, or at least much of it. But what can I see now? This war pushed many of us to the ambition. It used to exist, but now it is at the top. And we can feel this hunger for success at the international market. How does it take place at your place? Did you review the strategy, the plan? Did you have a formalized strategy? Or did you rush and then had to come back? How did it take place? Look, first of all, I agree with you that first, there should be an ambition. Secondly, I will tell you something awful, or maybe I will repeat it again, that the war for many projects is a catalyst, unfortunately. You are deprived of your balance. I wouldn't say comfort zone. We never used to be in the comfort zone. So you are deprived of your balance. And the war has become this factor. And secondly, for many, if not for all of the businesses in Ukraine, it is a forced step. And if you now ask me question number 0, should you expand abroad or you shouldn't, I will tell you you should. in spite of you not having ambitions, plans, or strategies. You do not have any intrigue in this question. You need to expand abroad. You can be doing that in a clever way, or you can do that in the light-headed way. You can make some mistakes, or maybe you will do everything properly, but you need to expand. That is why, of course, we had an ambition, which, let me repeat again, somehow was not implemented somehow. The war has become a catalyst. And in fact, the development of the strategy started just in our common office with Volodymyr, in an amateur way, which this room was of about 7-8 square meters. That's what helped you, that it was tiny. You didn't have a place to go to. So the whole management was sitting at the space of 200 square meters more. It was reserve headquarters of Nova Poshta. So the development of the strategy started, and frankly, this strategy is going on in its development even now. After the 2.5 years of the work, it is constantly modernized, reviewed, because one of my conclusions, according to our experience, not that substantial but still experience, that no one knows how it will take place during your international expansion. Look, in practice, 80% of all of our office researches, which we conducted in April or in May 2022, were then thrown away into the litter. 80%. But if we were not trying, we would never understand what is taking place. If you just think the decision itself or the lack of decisions to expand is the main obstacle for you to understand what is taking place there. It is very similar to, well, I don't know, when you look in the aviation sphere, the flight at the speed of which is higher than 7 units. No one knows what is taking place there, neither academics, scientists, or market experts. And we did not know that as well. And today, in each of the countries, they have their own situation. And only formally speaking, at the battlefield, we are finding out how we should do something. In fact, it is an important point. I always say that maybe our business, the strategy is the strategy. So in this scheme, for me, it's the constant return to the review, and review. And you shouldn't shave that, definitely. It's a totally normal process. Okay, let's, from the retrospective of 2 years, let us think, which 3 key issues, if you are looking now back, you need to solve now before rushing in, understanding that you'll still have to come back, but still there are 3 key issues which you definitely should find answers for. The first issue, whatever it may seem weird, however, it is not conflicting with my recommendation to expand, but still, you need to answer the question, why you are doing that. As it was said by the classic, why? What for? The worst thing which may take place with you, you are expanding because you decided that, or because you made up your mind, or because Mr. Klimov said from the stage you should do that. You need to answer the question for yourselves, what you like to from project, it's for sure. And let me repeat, it is not in conflict with your decision to expand. Secondly, you need to decide what you are expanding with, because one of our, again, I will not tell you mistakes or errors, but the first decision which we took, and the answer what we are expanding with was the solution we are copy-pasting Ukraine, non-adapted product. Well, yes, it's obvious, right? You have success. Leader the market, everybody loves it more or less, right? Everybody is recording stories and reels, everything is cool, right? Let's expand. Moreover, at the moment we had the second confirmation. It was Moldova already. And I need to say that in Moldova, we were expanding for a long time to achieve certain financial objectives and local leadership. But still, we expanded. And we have the confirmation of our hypothesis. That is why we expanded. But then it turned out that everything is done in a different way. You cannot copy-paste. And now, there is at least one big country where we are still trying to treat this attempt to copy-paste. So my second recommendation is you need to decide what you are expanding with. And the third one is how. That is about the actions plan. And here, there are lots of strategic issues. For instance, the question, should you expand on your own or with your partners? Should you expand with what money? You cannot just now take the capital out. So if a cool here generating lots of money, well, nothing more than $1 billion per month can be taken out of the country. So if it's a huge project which needs huge investments, you are limited by these limits. So you need to understand how you are restricted. So simplifying that, 3 answers to the 3 questions: why, what with, and how. You need to find these answers. Well, in fact, it's a strategy already. If you have the answers for these 3 questions, it's already a strategy. Let us now talk about how. The capital, obviously, we understood it. Let us talk about the team, because there can be different approaches. You can send your people there, you can hire people there. The ones who are hired there should be integrated. You can hire ours or foreigners. What do you do in this case? The people and the sales there abroad. Look, again, I will not give any recommendations. Let me just tell how it took place at ours, because who said that was right? Thankfully, as it was the end of 2022, we had rather many people, Ukrainians. Moreover, we used to have people who used to work with Nova Poshta. So from country managers to the employees and workers of the department level, we did not have any issues with people who understood what Nova Poshta is. And as for the staff, for instance, at the departments, even now we are working using this fuel, because honestly speaking, there cannot be better people in the service at the front line. I cannot see better people in that. I don't want, of course, to offend our colleagues from Europe, but I cannot see cleverer and better employees than Ukrainians. In offices, post offices of Nova Poshta, Nova Post, in all of the countries, mostly we have Ukrainians working. As for top management, the situation is different. We have quickly understood that in the sales we need to invite the local representatives. It did not take place instantly, so it was an achievement. Well, in the empirical way. we made this conclusion. On the one hand, it's easy for me to talk about that, because we lived through that and we paid for the 2 years and 10 months. But I'm sharing that with you because maybe I don't want you to waste this money and time. So in fact, 3 weeks ago, there was, just imagine, in 2 years and 9 months, 3 weeks ago, there was a historical event taking place when the CEO position of Nova Post Poland, we invited a Polish person. Not a word in Ukrainian. And other languages which could be closer to it. Either Polish or English, that's it. And in fact, this decision, as for me, is a historical one. We used to have Polish citizens in sales, and in German and in Poland and the Baltic countries. But now the CEO is a Polish person, and that's it. I went there on purpose for his first day at work, and I was watching how the whole Polish office was talking to him in bad English, because there were no other options. The Polish office is speaking Polish. That is why they can move between languages. But now I understand that the office in Kyiv will have to speak first in bad English, and then I hope we'll improve it and have it perfect. It seems to me that this is part of the creation of global culture, and I think that sooner or later you will achieve the level that English language will be. Yeah, we don't have any other way out. It is the Polish, then it will be the German or the Spanish person. I know that we need to let you go. We were a bit late because of the air raid alarm. I always love to speak about the recommendations, but still, Volodymyr Moholetny and you always say, don't listen to any recommendations, expand, do it. But I have the question of more like this. What about your personal one mistake as a founder during the global expansion, which is super painful for you? Your personal one, not a recommendation, but which could be even now when you're looking at it and it is still painful. Or you don't have any, or maybe you should forget about your mistakes. Well, look, as we know, we are self-confident. So, of course, we are never making any mistake. Here we need to give a round of applause for such an answer. Yes, the whole history of Nova Group is the continuous victory after victory. Of course, I'm joking. What I mean, you don't need to deal with your self-deprecating. And every entrepreneur who is never making mistakes is always trying to pile up experience, either investing into future victories, or how Edison said, I just made 99% of attempts to get rid of what is not working. There are several useful lessons, I would say, which I learned. There are several. First of all, do not postpone the expansion. Don't postpone it. Every day when you postpone the attempt, even if it's just a mistake, you will be sorry about each of the days. This is the first point. Secondly, you will have to, whatever it may seem weird, you will have to review your core business, and you will have to review what you've done at your mother market. That's how it is taking place with the group of Nova Group, because Europe is creating for us the impact to review the processes here. And It's not because it is not working here, it is working. But there, you're doing that in you. It's always like that. When you are moving to a new house, after a period of adaptation, you understand that you cannot live in the new one. You wouldn't be able to live in the old one. And what suited you in the older one does not suit you in the new one. You used to like it, but now it does not suit you. You used to play tennis, you got used to your sneakers, you bought the new ones, tried to take the older ones in a month. You will just fail. They will be pissing you off. So it is launching the process of the review of your successes. And maybe you will find out that your successes used to be, well, maybe not accidental, but still they were suiting the reality. And the third one, which is connected with that, don't try to copy-paste. Life is totally different. One of the interesting conclusions that even all of the European markets are not homogeneous, they are not similar. The consumer in Spain and in Poland are different. The consumers in Germany and in Poland are dramatically different. Even Ukrainians are different. That is why your model has to be really flexible, ready for changes of the strategy. By the way, that is why you need to use the partnership in your expansion, because there can be your potential future partners who know better what is taking place there than your Kyiv market experts. At this important note, with the urge to go global, I think that we need to thank Vyacheslav that he joined us. It's a very inspiring and cool